These guys will love you to death. GameMasters here, and happy Valentine's Day. Before you rip open that box of chocolate or give yourself some love because no one else will, let's dive deep into the perfect love triangle for your next Valentine's Day one-shot adventure. I'm talking, of course, about you, an incubus, and a succubus. And today I'm going to go in deep as to what these fiends are and how you can use them in your campaign to tempt your players. The incubus is male in appearance, whereas the succubus is female in appearance. But don't let those appearances fool you, and I'll explain that in a moment. Both inhabit the lower planes and are usually found in the service of demons, devils, night hags, and Asmodeus, the ruler of the nine hells. He will use these fiends to tempt mere mortals into performing evil acts. Now, a moment ago, I said not to let their appearances fool you. Get this. Any succubus can become an incubus, and any incubus can become a succubus, although they may have one form that they prefer over the other. And we'll talk a little bit more about this once we examine their stat block. But regardless of the form one may take, it's guaranteed that it will be a form that its target will find to be the most appealing. Perhaps it'll be the person of their dreams, or perhaps they will appear as someone with outstanding wealth and power. All of this is an attempt to seduce their target in order to have that mortal bequeath their soul over. But herein lies the real trick. The succubi or incubi will not draw up a contract for that soul. Instead, they will depend upon three betrayals: a betrayal of thought, a betrayal of word, and a betrayal of deed. And that's all it takes for the person's soul to belong to that fiend. And once in possession of the soul, the succubus or incubus will then slay their intended, thus sending the tainted soul into the lower planes. Before we jump into the incubus and succubus's stat block, I first want to thank these fiendish supporters. Their contributions to this channel have been beyond gracious, and I cannot thank them enough. If you would like to contribute by becoming a Patreon or YouTube member, I'll leave a link down in the description, and then of course I'll add your name to this ever-growing list of supporters. With any succubus able to become an incubus, and vice versa, the actual stat block and abilities are the same. They are a shape-changing medium fiend of neutral evil alignment. They have an armor class of 16, 12d8 plus 12 hit points, have a flying speed of 30 feet, and have a strength of 8, a dexterity of 17. Their constitution is 13, intelligence is 15, wisdom is 12, and their charisma is a whopping 20. They have damage resistance to cold, fire, lightning, poison, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical weapons. They have a challenge rating of 4, which to me seems a bit low considering the cunning of their abilities and actions. They have an ability called telepathic bond, and we'll return that to that moment, and we'll return to telepathic bond in just a second. They can shape change, and that's polymorph into a small or medium humanoid. However, should they morph into something without wings, they do lose their flying speed. For actions, they can attack with their claws, dealing 1d6 plus 3 melee slashing damage, but only while in fiend form. They can charm a humanoid, and a moment ago I mentioned that they have an ability called telepathic bond. This allows them to ignore the range restriction on its telepathy when communicating with a creature that it has charmed. Should a humanoid be targeted with charm, it must succeed on a DC 15 wisdom save, else it is charmed for 1 day. The incubus and succubus also have an action called Draining Kiss. The fiend can kiss a creature it has charmed or a willing creature, and that target must make a DC 15 Constitution save, else it will take 5d10 plus 5 psychic damage. Lastly, they have an action called Etherealness, in which they can enter the ethereal plane from the material plane or enter the material plane from the ethereal plane. In essence, these are some fiends that you simply don't want to fall in love with. They may appear handsome or pretty, but do what you can to make those saves, for the last thing you want is for your character's soul to descend into the lower planes without hope of return. These guys can be found on page 349 of the Monster Manual should you want to look up more, but I've tried to do my best to cover them here in depth. Oh, and one last thing. A succubi and an incubi can reproduce with one another, begetting another of their own kind. However, should they form an unholy union with a humanoid, the offspring is known as a cambion, and that child is generally wicked and fiendish, as they were born to be bad. But this video is about the love that the incubus and succubus can offer up, not about the responsibility that follows. Players, what would be a telltale sign that your DM has just tossed one of these into the playing field? Have you been pitted up against one in the past? How did you survive the encounter? Or did you survive the encounter? Or would you just simply pitch a tent and try to hide inside until that fiend went away? DMs, how likely are you to have an Incubus or Succubus pop up in your next session? These guys don't get enough love, so I hope my sharing them with you helps give them some attention that they probably deserve. Everyone, I've asked a few questions, I've tossed out a few ideas, but talk to me down in the comments. How likely is it that you'd play with either a Succubus or an Incubus if given the chance? Or both? Again, tell me down in the comments, and until next our paths cross, may you have, on this grand Valentine's Day, all the love that we know you deserve.